So well done for making it this far, if you have. Well done for watching all those videos. I think it's good to think about why the ICD are asking DDE students to learn about this stuff. And I think it's partly because of like the difference in ballet training now compared to when the ICD began. I think in the imperial school in Russia 100 years ago, every ballet student would learn to play the piano as well. It's just what they did. And that's kind of gone. Fair enough. I mean, people haven't got time. This training that dancers do is full on. They can't be expected to do the piano as well. And so I think the ICD are thinking that lots of the students they're seeing in the exams just aren't naming any rhythms, and they'd like it if the students knew about the rhythms. But it's important to know that you're not going to fail your exam if you don't know these rhythms. It's more something that you're expected to learn about, but it's not really something you're going to be tested on. You will be asked about it in the exam, but if you get it wrong, you're not going to fail. So that's something to bear in mind. And the other thing to say is that all these rhythms, I think you can kind of tell from the way I've made the videos. It's not like I've given you the exact answers of what things are, because all of these named rhythms in music, they're like fuzzy definitions, because the real definition of the music is what's written down in the music. It's in the music notation or the music score. So if you talk about a piece of music like the grade 3 bar Adagio, the best way to describe that music would either be playing the music and we listen to it, or we look at the music written down, and then there's other words we can use to describe it, like it's a lyrical 6/8, or, you know, it's smooth. But those aren't as good, those aren't the best definitions. The best definitions are the actual music. And so the most important thing to know is that you can't just say, you can't learn these ballet rhythms and then say, can I have a rag? Ready? And, you know, it doesn't mean anything. You're asking for a rag. You're doing that to kind of show your knowledge and to help the students learn about a rag, to help the pianist if they don't know, if they can't think of what to play, and to also add a bit of variety to the class. But you still have to count everything, and you have to count it in the speed you want. So if you say, I'll have a rag ready and, you sound like daft. You don't, can I have a march? Okay, let's go. There's a million kind of marches. They can be at any different speed. You have to count what you're doing, and you have to count what you're doing at the right speed. And that's the most important thing. You get a few extra musicality marks for knowing all these rhythms, or for knowing some of the rhythms. But most of your music marks in the DDE exam come from setting exercises that make sense, so they have, they're in even phrases, and then being in control of the music and setting exercise with the right speed, and also just ending up with appropriate music. If you kind of finish every exercise and it worked, you're going to get a decent music mark, unless it's just the pianist doing all the work, but hopefully that shouldn't be happening. I'd say with all these rhythms, I think it's more useful to be able to, it's really useful to be able to come up with the rhythms and say, I want a march, so a march goes dun, 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 dun. That is great. But what's also really useful is to be able to listen to music and think, this could be a march. Or listen to music and think, this could be a waltz, or I think this is a mazurka. I'd say that is a more useful skill to retrospectively know. So you listen to an exercise, and then the examiner will say, what kind of music do you think that was? And being able to give a good answer to that question, that's probably more useful. And that's, I think the ICD would like it if you could do that. But again, you're not going to fail if you don't know. You're going to lose a mark. Knowing the syllabus is a million times more important than this. I think it's also good to think about another reason why the ICD, I think, want more kind of knowledge of music is because really in a ballet class, the main things we learn are coordination and musicality. Like, that's what a ballet class is for, really. That's what dancing is, really. And so if we just kind of skip over all the musical training, then, we're missing out a lot of what we should be doing. And then the last thing to say is that, I haven't talked about how to count at all. I've just done a lot of counting in all these videos, but at no point in any video have I ever not counted the in-between bits between the numbers. It's just something you have to do. There's no other way around it. You can't do a DDE exam and count 1, 2, 3, 4. It just won't wash. You can't do it. You've got to count the bits in between. Even if you don't know the rhythms and you can't name the rhythms and you're not thinking a rhythm first, which I wouldn't do, you've got to count the bits in between, and then you could maybe think afterwards, oh, that might have been a rag. So if I'm setting an exercise, I'm not thinking I'm going to do a waltz. I'm just thinking 1 and 2 and I'm counting bits in between. And then I could think afterwards, well, that could be a waltz, it could be a mazurka, it could be a 6/8, you know, it could be any of those things. You have to count the bits in between. There's no way around it. You've got to do it. It's wrong not to do it. It's incorrect. And that is when people are not going to pass the music section of the exam, when they're leaving it completely up to the pianist to do all the bits in between. They're not giving any clue. It's weird. And, you know, someone who doesn't pass their music section will sound like 1, 2, 3, 4. And someone who gets a brilliant mark will sound like a 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4. There's not much difference between the best mark ever and not meeting the standard. You've got to do it. Even if you don't know all these rhythms, you can still end up singing these rhythms by just singing anything. So I think that's a good thing to know. You have to sing the bits in between. You have to do something. You can't just do nothing and hope for the best. And then I think the other thing is that I think with these rhythms, people get a bit stuck because they're trying to think of the perfect answer. Because I think a lot of dancers end up being perfectionists just because that's what, you know, it's kind of self-selective. The kind of people who get to DD will often be people who are a bit perfectionist. And that doesn't help in a way, because in music, you're not looking for the perfect music, you're looking for any music, and it probably will fit. So don't spend even 5 seconds thinking, what would be the perfect music for this? Just try singing anything while doing the steps where you have, and do the in-between bits, and then you're probably going to be right. And then the other thing is, it might help just to think about how pianists see the dancers. I think this is the same for lots of pianists. It's definitely how I see it. I kind of see it a bit like a silhouette. Like, I feel like I would play the same music if the dancer was behind a screen with a light shining behind them and it was shining on a big piece of paper and I could only see a silhouette. Because those are the kind of things I'm looking for. I'm looking for up and down, moving side to side. Like, to me, that you get, you know, if you're doing a tendu to the front and a tendu to the back, it's the same music. The important thing is the kind of character of the music, what it looks like overall, the kind of shape, how the shape changes. So I think when you're choosing the music, you need to think more about that and reflect that kind of rhythm in your voice. So don't worry too much about what the steps are, worry more about what it looks like to a non-dancer and how would you make up music that fits that. So if it's going a dum dum, if it's lots of jumps, then it's probably going down and down and up and down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So then that's going to be counted a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then I've got my in-between bits. If it's a balance, it doesn't matter where it's going a dum cha, it's going side up, down, that kind of thing. To me, you've got the in-between bits then. You've got a 1 and 2 and yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. You've got to get the in-between bits from somewhere. So if you're a person who finds music hard, you might find it easier to think about the dancer think about the music from a non-dance perspective and more from just a visual perspective of what it looks like and where you could kind of fit things in. And nearly all the time, you know, there's not one answer. There's a million correct answers, or there's a few anyway. And you're probably going to get one of them by just counting anything. But you have to count the bits in between. You've got to do it. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye!